Nope, what I do here.
Okay, welcome to One Stop Coopshop.
Hey
Steve
there.
here with two awesome people, like always. How's it going, Bairnt?
Always. Two awesome people. We are here with Canje and myself and Steve. So I guess that's three, Steve. That's three people.
Well, I'm with two people. Yes. I should have
Hey
gone like
everybody.
I'm here with only one other awesome person. Like, which one is it?
Well, we can fight over that we can make that that can be one of our topics. Which one of us is awesome?
I'm out. I'm not awesome. Not it. Not it.
No, it's good to be here. Good to be here. Glad to see everybody in the chat. I'm really excited for this one. We're going to be talking rule books. Canje, thank you for joining us as always. It's good to have you here. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so this one, if you're new, this is a live, Saturday morning chat for us, Saturday afternoon for some of you guys too, and we just cover random topics board game topics to say, that we've got a lot of suggestions from viewers, so keep them coming. We'll keep churning through that list, but also focus on like cooperative and solo games, and it's a fun chat. So,
And it's not even semi-scripted. It's just not scripted.
Exactly.
It's not scripted.
This is the unscripted raw footage. So, okay, but today, like you said, the topic is Rulebooks. He's Kanji. Had a fun experience with Rulebooks this week.
Yes. So tomorrow I'm going to be playing as Zerevia, which is I've played through the game 4 times so far, and it's fun. It's a good game, and we'll talk. And I'm live playing it tomorrow. But going through the rule book was interesting, and it was interesting because the game has these little nuances, but the nuances are broken up throughout various sections of the rule book, right? So for instance, if you're on page 3, there's some symbols on page 3 that aren't explained until page 17, and then the use of those symbols are explained on page 10. So and I'm just using arbitrary numbers for people who have the rule book, but it's just it was so kind of broken up that I was like, okay, I can see like where someone not having a really good rule book, and not this game, but I'll get into the one that really ticked me off. But I can see where not having a good rule book could actually deter people from playing your game. I mean, it could be to the detriment of your passion, right? To where you want to say, okay, well, this game's amazing. I know it's amazing, but because the rule book is so hard to grok, it's just like no one wants to play it until someone like Bairnt or Steve does a video that says this is how you play this game, and then they can like, oh, okay, the game looks cool, but you lose people and you lose funding because the rule book isn't where it should be.
Yeah, definitely. Do you ever get to the point where you're sitting down trying to play the game and you're reading the rule book and you get that frustration, so then you just like sit down and walk away?
Yes, I had that with Etherfields. Etherfields rulebook was hot flaming trash. I'm so sorry, designer. Who I know you put a lot of work into that game. Making a game is not easy. It's very complicated. Yeah. I don't want to poo on that aspect of it because being a dev is so hard. But the rulebook was hot trash, and it was like, it didn't have an index, it didn't have a table of contents, you didn't know where anything was. It was just so disjointed and a mess that it actually was to the detriment of Etherfields. I love Etherfields. I think the idea of it, and minus the dream world, the missions themselves are top notch, but it was completely destroyed by this rulebook. Nobody wanted to play it.
Yeah, Successful Geek agrees with you here. He says, I've cooled on backing anything Awakened Realms because Etherfields and Great Wall rulebooks.
Oh, I have Great Walls, and I haven't even opened the book yet. I'm so scared. I'm so scared.
Well, look on the bright side. I think I may be completely wrong, but I think they actually grabbed people from outside to start helping with their rule books, if I remember right. And
Good.
I mean, I know they rewrote Etherfield's rule book to help people. I think when they originally designed it, they were hoping that the rule book would just like supplement the game. The game was supposed to teach you, but people are like, but that's not how I want to learn. I mean, you take games like, my rulebook experience is I'm a person that will, even if the rulebook's terrible, I do my best to fight through it to find that game. And I'm the only one, I think, in all of One Stop, and I think maybe the world, that still plays Myth. And that was because that rule book, again, was... I mean, talk about like having to flip from page to page to look for something. How about trying to find something that's not even in a rule book? Okay, these monsters like poison you. Poison is never mentioned in the rule books. Like, no idea. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing you have to deal with at this game. So there are... Now, that's, like, unquestionably just bad. You have to be able to... You have to have the rule in the rule book. You can't just not have it and expect it to be, like, people go like, oh, I can hardly wait to play this game. So, I mean, I had to... I think part of the deal is having a Dungeons & Dragons background. I was able to just kind of go... We'll just say poison does 1 damage. If you're making up rules, that's that's a plan, right? That's probably a bad plan. You should probably have a plan when you make your rule book. So I think as long as it's in there, like you're saying, Canje, you had to move from here to 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 find all your rules. I have noticed that some rule books now, which I really appreciate, mainly I think, I mean, we'll get to some of the good rule books, and we'll be talking about Fantasy Flight, I'm sure, pretty soon. They actually started going like, okay, and then what after you attack, you're going to do any enemy activation that is covered on page 16. Like they actually put like covered on page 16. Like, okay, good, I know where that is now. Like,
know where to go. Yeah.
It's like, we're going to pull a token and like for an encounter. Encounters are found on page 18 of the rule book, and the intruder attacks are found on page 22 of the rule book. Like this is Awakened Realms again. I'm talking about through. I noticed that their latest lockdown one, they even in the original one, they started putting that like, hey, go to this page, go to this page, go to this page, because if sometimes there's so many things they're trying to teach you at one moment in time that like you're saying like, okay, this is the part about exploring, but while you're exploring these things might happen. And I think that you're finding these more in co-op games than you're finding in competitive games, because in co-op games I think their biggest thing that I found in the rulebook that is so frustrating and so hard to get wrapped around is your AI, unless it's like a Euro that has like 3 things it does. If it's like a dungeon crawler, it's like playing Dungeons & Dragons. There's so many things that you could do that the AI has to react to it.
Right.
And so they have to have this huge amount of rules based on what you did. Did you do this? This could happen. Did you do this? This could happen. Did you do this? This could happen. When you do this, this happens. So I think and if they don't, the AI never feels organic enough. And it just is just, okay. It almost feels like this, not even an adversary. It's just a thing that moves around the board that you deal with. So that's, I think, I mean, it almost seems like majority, like I'm reading through Bard's Song right now, and it's great. I mean, people say the rulebook's bad. I haven't found too big. I mean, it's not too many issues with it. I mean, it's your standard 40-page dungeon crawl rulebook. I mean, that's you're gonna get that, and a lot of it's AI stuff, and a lot of it's like reacting to things you do. I don't know. I think that's part of like the things we're noticing in rule books now. But one of the things I want to make sure is people. I love the fact they're going like, turn to page 22, turn to page 18. You'll find this in the index, kind of thing. I think that's great. If they don't have an index and they don't have a thing at telling me what the tokens do or anything, what? Nope, that's got to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Successful Geek mentioned just tabled Wonderland War last night. Gotta give them a shout out for a pretty good rulebook. It isn't perfect, but I like the structure, and they had example pages and FAQ. That's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely good to hear, and I think that was the focus of this is the how much has a bad rule book kind of tainted the enjoyment that you had going to the game before you got into the game far enough to say this is good. Another rule book, and I'm probably gonna get like stoned for this, but it's Mage Knight's rule book.
How dare you?
Mage Knight is a fun game, but I had to have somebody teach me. I think I watched Liz Davidson's playthrough of it. She taught me the reconnaissance, but then I had to have someone else teach me like more about, even more as you get into the story.
Right.
Because my brain couldn't handle it. It couldn't handle it. It could not handle that rule book.
That one is
tricky. It's a textbook. It's not a rule book.
It's tricky, yeah, because they have, like, here's your learn to play, and they walk you through, which is actually pretty good, I think. I'll give props to that. But then you also have this rule book. But the thing is, the information between the two is not the same. So you might have to go back to, like, one of them to figure, like, where's this? It should be in the rule book. No, it's not in the rule book. We taught you that earlier. You should know this already. I'm like, I forgot, So it's like... Yeah, that's a tricky one to get your head wrapped around. And Snow mentioned the original Mage Knight had a rulebook you had to read thrice. Yeah. I
Yes.
frequently read rulebooks at least 3 times before I sit down and play the first time. Not everyone.
Steve also sleeps on rule books just so he can
The
try to get
osmosis. The
as well.
osmosis just gets
He's
into
tried this as well. So he reads it and then he puts it on his face when he sleeps. That's the other thing he does.
It's my mask, my sleep mask.
my
Rulebook.
my problem is, and the thing of it, and I didn't realize this until I was in college because I struggled sometimes in school when it was just reading through the text and trying to absorb the text, is that I'm a visual learner. I am. I'm not gonna, if you hand me a rule book and say you should know how to play this game by reading this rule book, I'm not. I gotta. And so when I usually play a board game or I'm learning a board game, I sit down, I pop open a rule book, and I'm playing while I'm reading. So I'm doing one for one so I can feel it all out as it goes. And if the rule book isn't good, then I'm just all over the place.
Kim's calling me out, by the way. She's just she's taking dirt. So, yeah. I want to piggyback off your good comment there, Canje, about the structure of like visual learner. And one of the best rule books, I didn't think this originally, but one of the best rule books I've come across is actually Sword and Sorcery. It is like a 50+ page monstrosity of a rule book. It's huge. But the reason why it's good is because it has the cross references we talked about. So like I can well, I think it might be on this page. So I go to that page. If I'm wrong, it says, oh, you might want to look at these things if it's not the information you're looking for. It gives you a page number where to go to, which is great because like I will always get to the right spot even if I guess wrong. Awesome. But the other thing and why it's so big is it has tons and tons of examples. Here's all the people on the map. Here's the line of sight. Here's what I can see. Here's the things I can do. Here's a step-by-step of what actions we're talking about. And that is excellent. I wish I'm always happy to see more and more examples in rulebooks.
Yeah. Examples of certain situations, not all situations, but certain ones are great.
It's even better when they bring an example of a situation first, and then they do it. I'm reading through Omicron Protocol right now. It's a game I'm going to be doing on the channel. It's probably going to drop real soon. It's not only do they have examples. My favorite is they have 3 examples explaining like potentially like some, and the third one's even like some weird outlier. Like, okay, this person's going to do this. Now, if it added this to it because of this, then this would be like this. I'm like, oh, that's really, I would have never thought of doing that first off, but it's awesome. They even went so far as to be like, here's how you move. You just take your move stat and you move. They could have just done that. Nope, they explained like 3 different examples of how you move, and they explained like, oh, okay, but then if you go through the terrain, which is found on page 22, this would happen. So he only gets 2 movement. It shows it in a little diagram. And then it's like, now imagine if he was going through the terrain and running into a guy and then like jumping over a fire hydrant and landing on a car and deciding to do a backflip. This is how it would happen. I'm just like, wow. I mean, so I like they not only do the examples, but they give like such a weird example that might happen. But when it does, you're not going, how are we going to do this? I don't really know what we're going to do about this. And then you have to make it up. Which then you have to have getting poisoned in myth, and then you have to make it up.
Yeah, and in that contains the easy stuff that you do normally with that, so then it just kind of all gels together really well. And like I said, I don't, like Snow was saying, says, I guess I'm not a visual learner, because if the rulebook has too many pictures, I get distracted, and I have so much difficulty reading such rulebooks, also awful to reference. It's not too much of it. It's just covering enough that someone who is a visual learner can pick that stuff up. I don't mind this book here. Ignore the tabs because I have the reference.
Man, that looks like a college textbook.
But it is. I mean, this is what I had to do to grok a lot of that stuff. But like, for instance, there is a visual in here that shows exactly what the board is, right? And then it explains it at the bottom. That told me everything I need to know to deal with the text that comes below it. So there's still text. It's just there's also scenarios that you run into that can help go through it. But when it comes to, I don't know how to best explain it. It's just very difficult if it's all just text for me to get through a rule book and not play the game while I'm doing it. So it's like, sit down, read the rule book by itself. Don't play the game. I won't learn a thing. I won't learn a single thing. But if I play along while I'm reading, I can.
What did you think of this War of Mine? Because that is almost the same type of thing as you're kind of playing as you're learning. Now,
I
to me,
love
I
it.
thought it was really well done and easy to do.
Yeah, I love the War of Mines book because the book is the game. You're playing. It's just saying, here's setup, fine, and then you play it however you play it as the story unfolds. I think it was great. I picked up that game very quickly.
I wish they would have not tried that with all their other games. That's really what they did with some of their other games. Like, okay, we're going to start with setup, and then this is what you're going to do in your first turns. What you're going to, like, at the beginning of the turn, this is going to happen. And they kind of went through the turns. But sadly, some of the other games they started designing were so more complex that it's like, as you're doing this turn, some of this stuff from here could happen. And then they started doing the references to pages. I know I'm talking about Awakened Realms too much, but I just know that sometimes it seems a lot more often during Kickstarters is when you're finding these rule books that are really tough, because either they don't have a good enough person proofreading these, or they have played it so many times that it's like, well, that's obvious. Why wouldn't you just do that? I've never played the game before.
Yeah,
that's one of the biggest things.
I'm not one of the playtesters that have tried it 152,000 times.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that makes it difficult for a hobby as a whole, because I can read a rule book and say, oh yeah, so here we can put our workers here. This is worker placement, and like, I know that you guys know what that means, but like, I take some random person off the street and I say worker placement, they might not know what that word, right? So we have this existing patterns and terminology that we all share and know. And for someone new, that's why we have gateway games, honestly, so that people can learn these things and get the vocabulary, and they can jump to other games from that point too. So it's a tough one. It's a really tough one.
Yeah, I still to this day I could easily find it out by Googling it really quick, but I just haven't for some reason where people call the game Ameritrash. I don't understand it at all.
No one does. No one does.
I was like, is that because it has dice? Is that why it falls into that category?
So a long time ago, like back in the early days of BGG, Board Game Geek, I guess, there used to be like two main areas that produce board games. There was over in Europe, right, and then over in America, and then there was this distinct differences between them, where a Euro, over in Europe, they were your victory points, for example. They tend to have references to city names and honestly bland art on the cover, right, and stuff like that. So things we're kind of associated with that. And over in America, they used to make very take that confrontational dice chucking, generally higher randomness, stuff like that. And those terms kind of made sense back then. Nowadays, the term Ameritrash and Euro don't have a lot of value in my opinion, because we've kind of we've learned over the years, and honestly, a hybrid between those is almost always the better choice. So,
okay. For Kickstarters, especially because what Bairnt was talking about, like, we see them more with Kickstarters. I think successfully he says, like, there's no reason to have a bad rule book. I think it's okay if they do, because they're still figuring it out and working it through. It shouldn't be that bad. I think that's the main thing, one. And two, the one thing that I think in this day and age, and I'm going to push for it because I think I felt it the most after playing Malia. From that point on, my brain said, if you have a Kickstarter and you don't have some form of demo, printable, TTS, Tabletopia, BGA, whatever it is, I'm going to be very hesitant to back, because it just makes sense for someone to try before you buy. And if I did not do that, I would have backed Malia, and then I would have been mad at myself. But for people who did, I'm not gonna knock you for it. It's your choice. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. Too much symbols. but I think
that's the Tabletop Simulator.
but I think Tabletop Simulator helped me make that decision. And so now with another Kickstarter that's out, that came out recently, Anasteer, I went looking for their TTS mod, and I was like, where's your mod? When are you going to have mod? Are you going to have, when's the, do you have a demo for people to try it to see if they're actually going to like it? And it got into that coy thing of maybe not, we don't know. And immediately I was like, okay, that's dumb. I'm done with you.
Well, I mean, I think it comes back to a topic we should discuss. I think we've kind of, I don't know if it's been floating around or anything, like companies for like that particular game comes from a company that I have a hard time backing to begin with. But like, I know we were talking potentially of like, hey, what kind of companies when they bring out a game would you like instantly kind of go, that's going to be awesome, I'm going to back this game, and what companies kind of like, ah. And I know maybe we'll use that other topic because I know all of us probably have had bad experiences with companies versus good companies, and we just instantly gravitate toward these. I do like Successful Geek. He is mentioning, again, I am 100% on board with his comments here. I mean, the end product shouldn't be bad. It can be bad while still in development.
Right,
this is true. And I've noticed that almost every Kickstarter now is like, here's our rule book, please give us feedback. Do they take the feedback, or do they just like delete all the comments? I have no idea. But we don't know. But at least they're giving us the opportunity as people that have never played the game, that reading through the rule book, I think I could understand this game. And I think that's hopefully helping a lot of companies coming out now with making games, as opposed to just like, here's our rule book. So like, all of us have probably gotten some type of previews at some point, or like you're saying, a tabletop simulator mod with their rule book, and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this? I have no idea. Like, again, some things aren't even referenced. I mean, I did one where like all the stories didn't even connect. I was like, how am I supposed to show that stories are connecting when none of these stories are connecting? Oh, I haven't made those yet. Well, that doesn't help me at all explain that part of the game. So I think, and then of course, as the game gets developed, you're seeing changes, you're seeing adjustments, and all that has a lot to do with community feedback now through Kickstarter, which I think is really helping.
Yeah.
Is it helping? Maybe for some people, maybe for others, they're just hitting thanks for the comment. Thanks for the comment. I have no idea.
But I think that speaks, and we can, that speaks right back to the rulebook thing, especially being a visual learner. The reason why I want it is because that's my visual medium to be able to understand what they're trying to offer.
Sure.
That's my rulebook. That's my buy-in to their product. Whereas they can say, here's the rule book in its infancy form. Some people can just grab that, read it, and be like, okay, this game's going to be awesome. If I read that, it means nothing to me.
How does that matter to you, Canje, for watching other players' videos? A playthrough?
That helps. Okay. Like, if I watch you or Bairnt or Mike or Colin or Jason or Peter play those games, I'm like, I look for those videos when I don't see them on Kickstarter, right? It's okay, we're going to preview this thing. All right, awesome. I go and I look at that. I'm like, okay, now I know whether I like it or not, because there's that visual aspect of it. But if someone just hands me a rulebook, you're handing me like Braille. It's just not going to resonate. I'm not going to pick it up. I'm not going to absorb it. I'll read it and say, okay, I know what you're trying to do. And then when I go play the game, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, that's how difficult it is for me from a visual learning perspective. And that's why I said, like, I struggled a lot in school because I never realized that. And all they kept handing me was history textbooks. Right. And it wasn't until I was like, I went to a speech language pathologist that said, this is not how you learn. And I switched it, that I saw a vast improvement in my education, because it was just handing me text isn't going to do anything for me whatsoever.
Yeah, some of the Successful Geek made a comment here. Says, yeah, if I hadn't got to play Voidfall on TTS, Tabletop Simulator, I wouldn't have backed it because there's too much going on for me to absorb it just through a video. So, like, even with a playthrough video, right? I mean, there's different levels of comprehension, I would say, there. That's...
Mm-hmm.
And all of us do our videos a little bit differently. I mean, if you watch any of my videos, make sure you read the pinned comments. I'm sure I've made at least 2 or 3 errors, especially on Kickstarter previews. Like, afterwards, I'm like, I'll even put stuff in there. After talking to the designer, I guess this is how it went. I'm like, kind of thing. And if you notice, I don't do a lot of previews because of that exact thing. They're enjoyable, and it helps me kind of see what they're planning. It's kind of neat to see things. But I mean, if you don't do them, sometimes you miss out on some absolute gems. Like, I don't think I ever would have really looked into Rogue Angels if I didn't get that demo of it. And now that's like probably my favorite game. I hope it comes out. I mean, if it doesn't come out, I'm going to ask him for like his entire collection if it ever doesn't come out. I'm just going to make a whole video series.
Yeah, and that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. It's the same thing for Isofarian Guard. If Rolling Solo didn't do it, I would have not known anything about that game. And I am very excited for that game. But because
Wow, where were you
Rolling,
when that was being kickstarted? Because that was like one of the that was like at one point that was like when that was being kickstarted, there were 3 huge games, and that was one of the 3 that was being. It was like that was like
Yeah.
the month people were talking about like, what am I going to do? I have to back all 3 of these. Like that
It was that one.
it was,
It was Oathsworn,
I think it was
and then
Oathsworn was that one,
Aeon's
and there was one
Trespass
of
Odyssey.
it was which one
and
was it?
all
Yeah, Oathsworn, Aeon's Trespass Odyssey, and Isofarian
Yep.
Guard.
All 3 of
and
those were the same month.
funny enough, all 3 of those I only learned about through preview videos.
Oh.
Like I didn't see them. This was before I really got heavy into Kickstarter, but I didn't see any of them. I didn't know much about any of them, but when I saw them previewed on different content creator channels, that's what I was like, okay, I really like how this plays. I'm gonna back this.
Cool. Bill mentioned something in this review we should brush on. Bill Holmes. Have you guys heard of Diced? I think that's how you say it.
No.
Yeah.
No, I have not.
No.
I'm
This is
guessing I should. Huh, Bill?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool
Does that-
system. It's an online resource, and what they do is they have
Oh.
there's animated, very detailed how to play walkthroughs with them. So it's
Oh.
an app you actually use. So I've not used it, to be fair. I'm aware of it. I know about it, and I've heard good things. I
Kanji's
do
going to
know
download it tonight. Kanji's going to download it.
because that I mean, talk about visual
He's
learning.
looking at his face like, I'm totally getting that.
Yeah, that's a good one
Yeah.
for visual learning for sure. Gino,
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
yeah.
Now, we've talked about bad rule books. Have we talked about good rule books? Because there are some good ones out there. I think I really like the way Fantasy Flight has gone with their rule books, where everything's in alphabetical order. You have to learn to play, and then as you're playing, you can kind of look up your rules as you're going. You could read that entire thing that says, like, hey, here's basically all the stuff. And I like how in there they have bullet points to explain how they interact with other rules. Then you can turn to those rules and figure out how they work. That's just how I've noticed some of Fantasy Flight stuff coming through now. And I think that's a good way to, I've enjoyed that system of learning the game, because then, like Canje says, you're reading that first rule book on how to play, then you can bring the game to the table with that rule book, start playing it, and be like, oh, I got sleuth? What is sleuth? Well, I'll go to the other book. Okay, sleuth, I can do this. Oh, and my character can also do this with sleuth, which gives me the ability to be sneaky. Oh, sneaky, I can turn to sneaky now. Okay, oh, that guy kind of does these cool things like that. So I don't know, I've really liked the way they do their rule book. I think it's great, or the rule system. I know I'm probably, but again, not every rule book and the way it's written is for every person. That kind of works for me. There's other people that want to start at page 1, read the 50 pages of rules, and then go. And that's Steve. Steve wants that. Steve wants that. And I can understand why he likes Sword and Sorcery, because Sword and Sorcery not only starts at A and goes all the way to Z, it goes from A to Z for the setup, A to Z for player turn, A to Z for enemy activation, A to Z for end of game kind of thing. Like, it's like every moment of his game, he's got all in one area of the rule book.
It's funny because Mike and I had a fun chat one day because we're talking about Valor and Villainy. Excellent game. And we sit down to play it, and the game is set up so that you play the first part of the campaign, and it's like, oh yeah, so set up this thing and just start playing. And you flip over these cards, and you think it's going to be like some type of story element or campaign, but no, this flip of the cards like, oh, here's the rule for this thing you just came across. And it literally teaches the rules in the cards as you play. And it was funny because Mike and I are similar in the sense that, like, we read through the whole rule book. And we like, okay, we got all the rules down. Now we sit down and play. And so we got to this point where, like, oh, well, I already know what this does. So we toss this aside and we kind of like, oh, I know what this does. So it was a weird feeling playing through that early campaign, the first missions, I guess scenario technically, when we kind of already understood that. So, like, it's interesting talking to you guys about this and how we just a lot of different approaches how we grok and understand rulebooks.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what game has a really good rule book that I've messed with. I'd probably say like Cartographers does. I forgot the company. Thunderworks Games. Role Player wasn't too bad for me to pick up, and I just read the rule book and then hop right in. But I'm not sure if it constitutes as complex. It wasn't complex. It was very simple to pick up.
Sometimes it gets kind of weird too with expansions because I play Marvel Legendary, which probably has like 247 expansions at this point. Um, so each one has its own rulebook with its own keywords, and so like I have literally a binder of rulebooks. And the tech, when I say rulebooks, they're just a single sheet generally, so it's not that bad. But it's like, oh yeah, with this keyword, which one is that in? And it might be a couple of them, so it gets kind of difficult to maneuver that way.
They would have to do to Bairnt's point, they would have to do what Fantasy Flight Games does, where they have the ever evolving living rule book and reference guide online. So whenever you're like, okay, I don't want to search through all the different books to find out what something is, either for Marvel Champions or for Arkham Horror, I could just jump online and I could look it up right there.
You're Baron Robin's here. It's
Yes.
hard. I don't read rule books. Baird explains it. But I hate too much upfront info to even get started. I also hate when we have to
Yes.
stop and look up stuff constantly, which is very true.
Yes, Robin. Yes, I do not like the okay. Read all of this before you can play. Just get me into it,
Yep,
and explain it as we go.
Yeah, and that's kind of sometimes where some of our group falls apart is like we'll get a game that's kind of a bigger game, and I'll be like, okay, so this is how we're gonna do. We're gonna go to our player turn, and we're gonna be doing these kind of things. And it's like we'll just learn it as we go, and sometimes it's like you cannot just learn it as you go. It's not going to work. Our biggest one, I think, sadly, I also produced the scenario incorrectly was Arkham Horror. I was trying to explain Arkham. Oh, we'll just do it as we go. I'm like. Arkham Horror, the living card game, you have to kind of know what some of these symbols mean. Cards, which because I can't see your cards, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, technically I could because we're all, and so like we're started playing things, and one of the person goes like, "Well, I just can't do anything. I can't even fight. I've got like one fight." I'm like, "Well, can I see your cards?" Okay, see that card? It allows you to use your intelligence skill to fight, but I didn't get to explain these things.
It's tough too because different people learn that differently. Like I always like to explain things based upon the goal oriented. So as soon as it's on the table, like, okay, to win the game, we have to do this. This is how we lose the game. Okay, the general structure of the flow is this, and you might do this action because it helps you win the game. So I kind of work backwards with like, here's how you win the game, and I draw lines off of that goal and connect all the dots from there. Some other people, because Mike's definitely this way, at least how he explains rule books, is he does the opposite, where it's like, oh yeah, here's all the things you can do. And then eventually we'll work down to now this is the goal you have to do. So it's very interesting how we all have different ways of approaching and explaining games.
Yes.
And it makes it really hard to make a rule book, right? Because everyone's different.
Everyone's different. Yeah.
Thank you, T. Clark. You're amazing.
For science. Have you ever read a rule book after Baird explained it just to see how badly he messed it up? Nice.
This has happened. This has happened.
Yeah, and I know we're almost at time, Steve. So I want to respect your time there.
Yeah, we'll have a longer one next week. I think this is the last week. I have to keep it relatively short. But the chat's been awesome. Yeah. You guys have been awesome. I feel like we talked about this for another hour.
Awesome. It's amazing. There is the rule books are going to be there. We have to learn how to play the games. They're never going to disappear. I think in co-op world that we live in, I believe we struggle the most with some of our rule books because you're not only playing against helping each other to learn how to play the game, but you're also playing against usually the board, and that board has to be able to react to you. And that's what I've found the most in rule books is trying to make that board come alive. Yeah. And in order to do that, you have to have a structured rule set or people can't follow it. Being able to understand exactly what a person is thinking up here when he makes the game is sometimes a little tough. And I think we've found all different medias and mediums in order to learn how to play these games. May it be somebody that's already learned the game. Maybe it be a video you can see. Maybe it be an audio cue. Maybe it be anything. Sometimes you're even just reading it and playing it yourself in order to be able to teach people. We all have our own ways of understanding rule books, and no matter how many times we try, there's never going to be the perfect rule book for everyone. And I think people are going to have to, people just eventually are able to find the ones that fit for them and usually go into that like category or genre or something. But it's always fun to try new things.
And I'll tell you, I think. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think that's the thing. I'm not looking for the perfect rule book, and I don't think a lot of people are. Right. I think it's the variety that we want, right? If someone is like Steve who can grok a rule book just text, have the rule book. If it's someone like me who either needs to, a lot of creators devs reach out to creators to say, hey, will you play my game? So you've got that visual medium, and then there's the online digital mod that people can play. So there's multiple avenues to solve the problem. It's just are these things being thought of by these companies and these devs of saying, I know people, my game is awesome. I want people to love it as much as my passion for it. I know that there are multiple ways I have to present this. Are they willing to put in the time to do that? Or are they saying, well, I can't afford any of this. Here's the rule book, and hopefully it'll get traction, right? It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, and Snow made the comment, every game should have at least 2 rulebooks, a learn to play and rules reference, which we mentioned earlier, right, a little bit. And I think that's kind of what you're implying a little bit too, Canje, and I agree with you, saying that, like, because we all learn different ways, it might make sense, like, to have the information presented different ways in different rulebooks like that. Like another one I'll mention real quick, U-Boat. That's got a normal rulebook, like you expect, but it also has a tactical supplement guide. So it teaches you how to do submarine warfare tactics in the context of that game. Because like, I knew nothing about that stuff, right? And so like, yeah, I could like move pieces around and understand how it works by the rulebook, but can I play effectively? No. But this book should help with that. In reality, it still doesn't help because I suck at being a captain and sub, but that's another story. But so yeah, I think like it's really tough because like people want to get down playing fast, learn to play, might be more visual learners, might have a lot of examples, might be quick references. It's really really difficult to get that parsed out.
Yeah. Hey Dale.
Yeah, Dale. I'm with you too. On average, I read a book 3 times as well. Yep. And I always try, like, I know with Kim's like Robin Bairnt, where sit down and play. I have to like quickly get through the instructions and get to it, and I have to also know things about having a rule book frequently. That's how she likes to learn. So.
The 2 book options, cool. The learn to play guide can be helpful because that's where all the visuals can go for people who want the visuals, and then the rules reference can be, chew through all the text and be fine. So it's a good option.
Cool. Well, I think no patience, just go. That's so true. Yep. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Oh, very true. Okay. I think that's going to end it for our chat today. So thanks everyone for joining. And we'll have another one next week. I know we already have some suggestions for topics, but feel free to send them in if you want to drop in YouTube below or go to our Discord, or you can DM me directly from there as well. Got a lot of suggestions through the DM. But yeah, we always love having chats, so it'll be fun. We'll keep this thing going. No. How to drive? Oh, just give me the car. I'll learn as I go. I love it. Excellent. Cool.
Thank you all for joining.
Before you part, what do you guys going on this week for your channels?
Huh?
What do you got going on this week for your channels?
Oh, I have no clue. I'm trying to do Omicron Protocol. I'm trying to do Bard Song. I'm trying to do you name it. It's out there. I got Marvel United. I mean, if anybody watched my unboxings, I've got way too many. It was that whole like drought of a game, and all of a sudden, pow, Christmas, and then drought of a game, and Christmas. It's like I've got like 3 different games that all just arrived at the same time. So I'm struggling to read through 3 rule books at the same time and get some stuff. I've got some guys primed. I'm gonna have a Bard Song paint thing probably sometime. I'm gonna do Omicron Protocol. I'm going to be doing Bard Song. I got rule books I got to read through here. It's like, yep, here we go.
One day.
That's probably my next 2 weeks is probably what I got going.
For me, tomorrow I'm playing Zerevia. That's the big one. I'm going to actually take time and do a kind of setup how to play it, to just go through it for people who get the game later or want to go through it and has that visual aspect. I'm going to walk through a setup, and then I'm going to play the first scenario and explain kind of a lot about the game. It's a fun game. I think a lot of people who like games like Mage Knight, people who like games like Explore It or Gloomy Killforth are going to love it. So, but that's tomorrow, and then if that goes well, I probably, because I'm really liking it, I want to play against one of the big bosses. I probably might make that a week of playing that game. But we'll see how viewers like it.
Sorry, I'm laughing at Robin's comment here.
My wife's amazing.
To be clear, Bairnt's idea of a drought is a week where only one game comes. Nice. That's awesome.
Yes, I did just put out my Nemesis campaign playthrough episode 2. It just came out. That is awesome. I'm excited to get. I want to get that. I want to get that one too.
I can't let your Untold Stories because I have it. I need to play it, and I don't want any spoilers.
Why aren't you playing it? Go. Okay, stop right now. Go read the rulebook and play the. No. It should be a walk in the park after you just did the last game you were reading with all your tabs and all that.
Yeah, but this, I'm telling you, after you're seeing this and you're like, oh my gosh, this is insane. This game's cool. This game is it's going to be one of those unknown hits because not a lot of people knew about it.
Yeah.
But like I know for my style of game, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, that one seems really cool.
So, but tomorrow, stop in, say hi.
Absolutely.
But tomorrow I'll be doing that.
Yeah, we're going to continue with our Marvel United content because we got the big X-Men, everything came. So we're going to work our way through different pieces of each of that and then do a review. So we're doing Fantastic Four focused Monday, and then doing activity coverage as well. This is a preview of a game coming out, a fully co-op game where you are kind of a resource management. It's hard to describe. It's hard to describe. You get through a deck, try to last as long as you can with limited resources, which should be fun. And then, of course, we got the Marvel Champions, the Sinister Motives campaign going on as well. So, yeah, a lot of stuff happening. And I think, we're doing some Uprising coverage because Uprising's next week as well.
That's a fun game.
Yep.
I've never messed with it, so I'm curious. I'm very curious. I have to go watch Bairnt's playthrough.
Yes, you can watch my playthrough of what not to do. I learned the hard way how tough that game could be. But it was really fun. It was really fun. I still got it. A lot of fun.
I like that one. Cool. Well, that's going to end it for today. Thanks for joining. We'll see you at the next stop.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.